I think I found the best town in Brazil. It's calm, safe, beautiful, and not too expensive. And it's called São Francisco de Paula, or as the locals call it, São Chico. Now it's a relatively small town, it's got about 22,000 inhabitants, and it's located in the mountains in the state of Rio Grande do Sul in the south of Brazil. And the good thing about the location of this town is that it's only about half an hour's drive from Gramado and Canela, which are two of the most affluent, sought-after towns in the whole of south of Brazil. And also it's not too far away from the biggest city in the state, Porto Alegre, which is about a 2-hour drive. So the town is very well located, and that's not the only positive about the town. Another positive is the beautiful nature and architecture of the town. So the town is surrounded by forest-covered mountains, with rivers and waterfalls, and also some lakes as well. The most famous one being Lago de São Bernardo, which is actually near the center of the town. And this is very beautiful. It's got lots of trees surrounding it. You've got a walkway and a road going around it as well. And there's lots of benches as well on the side. And you can see lots of people just sitting here, enjoying the views. And you can rent these swan paddle boats as well and go around the lake a bit. And also at one end, you've got this big hotel. It's called Hotel Cavalinho Branco, which is a famous landmark in the town. And I think that makes the area even more beautiful. And also when I'm here, I kind of forget that I'm in Brazil, because this does remind me a bit of Europe. And then the town has lots of other parks. A lot of them have waterfalls. And one of the most famous ones is Parque Oito Cachoeiras. So this park has 8 waterfalls, and some are small, but others are very big. And it's got lots of trails which connect the various waterfalls. And I was very impressed when I came here. This is a very beautiful park. And then slightly outside of the town, you have another park called Matria Parque de Flores. And this is the largest flower park in the whole of South America. So it's got 50 hectares, lots of different gardens with all types of plants and flowers. And then it's got lots of restaurants in there as well with very good food. So you could easily spend a whole day just in this one park, walking around and eating and drinking. And finally, not too far away from this flower park, you have a lake called Lago do Salto. And this is a man-made lake, so they've dammed a river called River Kai. And this area is also very beautiful. Some people have built some houses around it. And then the dams are also pretty impressive as well. You can see the water from the lake flowing down the dam here. And then you've got a road at the bottom of the dam. And I actually think it looks a bit dangerous, because sometimes when it rains really heavily, the water that flows over the road becomes really high and quite strong. And then they have to block off the road. So I'm not sure why they built the road like this. But yeah, it looks pretty impressive. But it's not just the parks and the lakes that make the town beautiful. Also, the town center as well is very nice. So the main high street is lined with trees, and they've got nice pavement in the middle of the high street under the trees, which you can walk along. And they've got some statues there as well, showing the history of the town. And then it's got lots of old buildings and churches as well. This is the parish of São Francisco de Paula. So this is one of the big churches in the town. It's well maintained and looks very nice. But some of the other older buildings look a bit run down and need a bit of maintenance. So all I would say is that São Chico is a very beautiful town, but it's not as well maintained and picturesque as Gramado and Canela, where the majority of the town is super well maintained. All the buildings are built in a similar style. No, it's not like that in São Chico. It's got some very nice areas, but then also some simpler, slightly run-down areas as well. And in terms of commerce in the town, so the town has a good selection of stores and restaurants. So it's got a couple of supermarkets. Hisul here is one of the big ones. And then you've got lots of pharmacies. I mean, I did a video last week about why there are so many pharmacies in Brazil, and São Chico is no exception. So it's only got 22,000 inhabitants. But in the high street, there's at least 5 or 6 pharmacies. So if you get sick in this town, there's no risk of running out of medications, that's for sure. And then you have the usual stores selling clothing, electronics, garden centers, pet stores. And one of the most famous stores in the town is called Miragem Livraria. This is a very old bookstore, and it's kind of become a tourist attraction because of how nice it is on the inside. So you actually have to pay to enter. So it's only 10 reais, about $2. And then you can have a walk around inside the store. Obviously they sell lots of books and stationery and so on. But I think most people come there just to have a look around. And it's very beautiful inside with all of its rustic wood and the walkways. And also has a gallery with some old pictures of the town and a cafe as well. So this is definitely worth a visit. And then the town has lots of restaurants. So it's got simple buffet restaurants and fast food, but then also quite a few exclusive, quite expensive restaurants as well. And we went to an Italian restaurant called Pasta Nostra, and we ordered Parmigiana with pasta, and I really enjoyed it. And it was 230 reais, which is $45 for 3 people. So yes, São Chico has an okay selection of stores and restaurants, but it's nothing compared to what Gramado and Canela have. So I'd probably say they have like 10 or 20 times more stores and restaurants than São Chico. But the good thing is, it's only a half an hour drive from São Chico to Gramado Canela, so you can easily go there. And then if you want to go to a bigger city with big shopping malls, then you've got Caxias do Sul, which is about an hour and a half drive away, and Porto Alegre, which is a 2-hour drive away. Okay, and in terms of the economy of the town, so the big industry which employs a lot of people is the logging and timber industry. So surrounding São Chico, there's lots of forests. A lot of them are managed forests, so they're replanted. And so São Chico produces a lot of timber. And then also farming is very important, in particular poultry and dairy farming. And then finally tourism is becoming increasingly important. And the town has lots of hotels and bed and breakfast. And many people come to stay in this town rather than Gramado Canela because it's significantly cheaper. And then they check out the touristy things in the town and then also travel to Gramado and Canela and do the touristy things there. So overall, the town is relatively affluent. So the GDP per capita for the town is 54,000 reais, which is basically what the average is for the whole of Brazil. But if you compare it to Gramado and Canela, then those towns are definitely more affluent. So Gramado has a GDP per capita of 88,000 reais, which is mainly due to the fact that it has so much more tourism than São Chico. And in terms of the climate of the town, so the town is pretty elevated. It's 750 meters above sea level, which means that the summers never get really hot. So usually the temperatures reach the high 20s, sometimes the low 30s. And then in winter it can get pretty cold, so it can drop down into negative figures. Now and again it does actually snow in the town. And also it's worth mentioning that because of the high elevation, it does rain a fair bit. And also has quite a lot of fog as well. And some people really like that, others kind of complain that it makes them a bit depressed. And you can see when I went there, so this is in April, and it was a bit cold and rainy. It was about 18 degrees, but because it was a bit rainy and humid, it felt a bit colder than that. Saying that, you still get more days of sun here than I did when I was back living in Sweden or the UK. And then finally, it's worth mentioning that 2 years ago, when it rained really heavily, there was flooding in the state. This town didn't get affected by any flooding, but it did suffer from some landslides. So some of the roads leading out of the town were damaged, so that caused some disruption, and it's just another thing they need to be aware of. Okay, and in terms of the infrastructure of the town, so this is relatively good. So if we look at the roads, so the roads connecting this town with Gramado Canela and Porto Alegre and so on, I mean, they're in pretty good state. Some of them are toll roads, which means they're well maintained, but the tolls aren't that much. So I think I spent about 10 reais, which is $2, on the tolls to get to São Chico, so there and back. So it's not that much money, but it means that the roads are well maintained. And in terms of the roads in the town, they're also okay, but a lot of the roads in the residential neighborhoods, they're kind of this cobblestone rock roads, which aren't the most comfortable to drive on or cycle on. But you have that in most towns here in the south of Brazil. Even Gramado Canela has it. And in terms of schools and the hospitals, so the public schools have got relatively good reviews. So this is one of the big schools in the town. It's called Colégio Estadual José de Alencar. And yeah, it doesn't look the prettiest, especially with the blue color. But then there's a private school in the town as well, and obviously more schools in Gramado Canela. And in terms of the public hospital, so this I was quite impressed with. This looked quite big and modern. But if you need to do something more complicated or see a specialist, then you're going to have to go to the surrounding cities like Caxias do Sul, Novo Hamburgo or Porto Alegre. And in terms of how safe the town is, so overall this town is very safe. So here's the local police station, and I saw police cars kind of patrolling the town all the time. Although it doesn't have that many cameras though, compared to other towns. So I think that's something they could improve. But overall, I felt very safe walking around the town. And if you Google crime in São Chico, what comes up is that there was one incident, seems to be between a wife and a husband, which resulted in a fatality. But apart from that, it's mainly a few burglaries. And then finally, in terms of the cost of living, and what I would say is that the cost of living here is definitely a lot lower than the surrounding big cities, and also the super touristy Gramado and Canela. So, I mean, supermarkets and petrol and so on, this is a similar price. But eating out in restaurants is definitely cheaper in this town. And then also rent and buying property is definitely lower here. So let's have a look at the price of buying a property in São Chico. So you got some relatively simple houses for sale. So you got this one here, which is 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 114 square meters. And that is 639,000 reais, which is $128,000. And then you've got a slightly smaller house here, which is also 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, about 104 square meters. And that is 438,000 reais, which is $87,000. And here you've got a timber house, which is 99 square meters, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. So that's 439,000 reais, which is similar to the previous one I showed, so $87,000. And then you have larger, more expensive houses. So you got this one here, which looks quite nice. So that's 142 square meters, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and that's 790,000 reais, which is $158,000. And then you have even more expensive houses. You've got this house here, 248 square meters, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1.8 million reais. So that's $360,000. So you've got a whole range of houses from 80,000 up to, $400,000. And also they've started building some apartments here as well. So I think some developers have been building apartments in Gramado Canela and now looking a bit to São Chico. So you've got this apartment building here, and an apartment which is 91 square meters, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, is 970,000 reais, which is $194,000. And if you were to look for an apartment like this in Gramado Canela, it would be at least twice the price, that's for sure. But then also another option is you buy some land and you build yourself a new home, which is going to be even cheaper. So they've got small plots of land for sale for 125,000 reais, which is $25,000. And then you have bigger plots of land. So this is 1,100 square meters for 200,000 reais, which is $40,000. And you could build a simple timber house there for, $15,000, $20,000. Now in terms of rent, this is a bit limited in São Chico. So if I click on rent here, then just 4 things pop up. One being a commercial unit, some sort of warehouse, and then 1 apartment for rent for 3,500 reais. So if you're coming to São Chico, you want to rent a place, then it is definitely a bit limited. But what I would say is that the estate agent in some of these smaller towns, they don't advertise on these bigger websites. So you kind of have to go and talk to them or send them a WhatsApp and ask them what properties they have on the book. And that way you'll be able to find more properties for sale and for rent. And also actually quite a few of the people living in these towns, they don't like using estate agents to sell or rent their properties. So you kind of have to go around talking to people in the town, and that way you'll find out that, oh yeah, this guy is actually wanting to sell or rent his property, but he's not going through estate agents. Okay, so that was São Chico. I mean, I really like this town. I think it's very beautiful, it's calm, it's safe, and it's not too expensive. But I'm not going to lie, Gramado and Canela, which are close by, are even nicer. It's more affluent, lots more stores and restaurants and so on. But they become super expensive. And you're having to spend, millions of reais to buy an apartment or a house. And so you've got São Chico, which is really close by and is a lot more affordable. So I hope you like this video. Please leave a like, subscribe. If you've got any comments, leave them in the comment section below. So thanks for watching. Until next time.